also wanted to ask you about the people who are arrested, the people who are filming these police attacks on civilians, the police killings. Yesterday, on Democracy Now!, we had this extraordinary show. First, we spoke to Abdullah Muflahi. He's the man who owns the Triple S supermarket in Baton Rouge, who was a friend of Alton Sterling, who sold CDs outside. He came outside his store quickly. He saw what was happening to Alton. He took out his cell phone, started filming. Right afterwards, after the police killed Alton, they arrested the owner of the store, Abdullah Muflahi. And they went into a store without a warrant, and they took out not only the video that the store had, they took the entire video camera. And then we spoke to Chris Leday. He had posted online the second video of the police killing of Alton Sterling. He's a 12-year Air Force veteran. He works on a military base outside Atlanta. He comes to work, and he is surrounded by police. He is first handcuffed, then he is shackled. He is put in an orange jumpsuit. He is held for 26 hours. He kept saying, "What are you arresting me for?" And one police officer said, "You fit the profile." And he said, "You have to finish the sentence." "I fit the profile of what?" Ultimately, he was charged with not paying old traffic fines. Can you talk about what happens to those who document the crimes?
Well, what happens to those who document these crimes is exactly what happened to those individuals in Baton Rouge. This is a good time for me to insert a really important point, and that is we have some wonderful police officers, sensitive, empathetic, compassionate, who, if they harbor racist or homophobic or sexist bones in their body, have learned to manage themselves, have learned to calm things down, to de-escalate, to diffuse tense situations. They're worth their weight in gold, and they need to be recognized. They need to be appreciated. But we have altogether too many officers that police chiefs and sheriffs are fond of calling bad apples. Well, when you get as many bad apples as we seem to see in police work today, it's time to examine the barrel. It is time to look at the entire orchard and to recognize that even a fresh apple placed into that toxic environment is going to turn bad. So as we look at, for example, a police officer being questioned about a police officer questioning others, a police officer behaving very aggressively, if not unlawfully, toward individuals, a police officer shooting and killing someone unjustifiably. To see a fellow American filming that, snapping shots, filming it, audio in some cases, should be a source of comfort to many of us in the community. It is completely 100% lawful for an American to do what those Americans did. Now, here's what I'm sure the police are saying. We were evidence gathering. We had information that somebody captured this, so we're going to go after that evidence. And there's nothing wrong with gathering evidence. The question is, to what end are you going to put that evidence, and how did you gather it? It is unlawful, by definition, to engage in illegal searches and seizures. The Constitution of the United States, the secular Bible of the land, tells police officers what they can and cannot do. And right now, a whole bunch of them are doing things that by law they cannot do.
Very quickly, Norm Stamper, I wanted to ask you, last year, the large California-based affiliate of the United Auto Workers said they wanted the International Union of Police Associations kicked out of the Union Federation, claiming police have, quote, utilized union resources to defend brutality and anti-blackness. The International Union of Police Associations is still in the AFL-CIO, but what is your response to that, the role of police unions?
Well, those who've read my first book understand that I've said I'm a labor guy through and through. I get goosebumps when I hear Joe Hill, my kin from Kentucky, come out of coal mining. I'm a pro-labor human being. But I draw the line at police unions. I think far too often they have shielded racist and brutal and trigger-happy police officers. I get their role to defend their fellow officers, but they do it in such a way that communicates to the community, we're going to circle the wagons, we're going to do anything and everything we can to protect this lawbreaker. I think it's time for national standards, by the way, Amy. I think it's essential that we recognize that policing is largely unsupervised in this country. There are no national standards, 18,000 police departments, one Constitution. What does that tell you? It tells me that systematic violation of the Constitution is only rarely addressed in a Department of Justice investigation. Better to set national standards, certify all police officers and their agencies, and decertify those so they can't go from Seattle if they get fired to NYPD the next day, which does happen. We need national standards.
Norm Stemper, in 1 minute, finally, can you respond to what you believe the police should be doing in Cleveland at the Republican convention, not to mention the Philadelphia police? I mean, years ago, I was the recipient of your police force's massive tear gassing of the protesters and the journalists who were covering the Battle of Seattle in 1999, something you've said you were very sorry about overall, how the Seattle Police Department dealt with the protesters, arresting over 600 of them. But right now, we're moving into two major conventions. We see they're opening up more police space. They're going to open the courts for 24 hours a day in Cleveland to arrest protesters. What is your advice to the Cleveland Police Department and to protesters?
It's a little late in the game for my advice, but my advice would have been to build trust between themselves and protesters, to invite protesters to the extent they're willing to accept such an invitation and not feel co-opted by the police, in co-planning, co-preparing, and indeed co-policing that, so that the First Amendment rights of all of those Americans who will be assembling there will, in fact, be honored. It's kind of late in the game to if you need a friend, to make one. But I would say that in the few remaining hours before those police interact with the protesters in Cleveland, that they do everything in their power to convey that they want, that they will, in fact, be protecting the First Amendment rights of their fellow citizens.
Well, I want to thank you for being with us, Norm Stemper, former chief of the Seattle Police Department, author of the new book, To Protect and to Serve, How to Fix America's Police. Recently wrote an article for Time magazine, Police Forces Belong to the People. He spent 34 years on the police force. Again, the former police chief of Seattle will be headed to the Cleveland Republican National Convention, and after that to Philadelphia to the Democratic Convention. We'll be expanding our broadcasts to 2 hours daily, starting next Monday for the next 2 weeks, to bring you the voices of people in the streets, in the corporate suites, and on the convention floor. That's our special Breaking with Convention for the next 2 weeks, beginning on Monday. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.